Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's session from chaos to clarity. Today, I'll be talking about transforming broker agent education with Adobe's unified learning platforms. I'm Dr. Alan Partridge. I'm the Director of e-learning evangelism for Adobe's digital learning solutions, and I'm thrilled to be here with all of you today. I always point out that the wealth of information in any given room like this comes from all of the participants. So hopefully, you'll have an opportunity today to contribute in various ways. But we also love hearing from you even after the event. So if you have things you want to add or say after the event today, that's perfectly fine as well. We'd love to hear from you. I'd love to get your input and your insights. Now, today, I'm particularly excited because we're going to be talking about the financial services industry. And we'll drill in and look at learning management systems and solutions within the context of the financial services industry today. And I think that's a particularly interesting space to look. We've done a little bit of research, so you'll see periodically on my slides that there are references down at the bottom to existing studies which have been done recently. This first one is from Gartner. It's the six turns critical to the future of customer value in financial services. And I'll mention those as we go through, but I want to keep you sort of on track as to, what are the sources of these numbers that you're seeing and why is that particularly relevant. But more important than the research is grounding these ideas in common sense and what's actually happening in the industry today. So I hope that I can help guide us toward more clarity about what is of interest in the industry and what's actually driving things forward and what kinds of transitions are happening. Now, it's interesting because the financial services industry has some parallels to other industries, but it also has some distinct differentiation. And I think one of the grounding bases that we should start with is an understanding that the FSI space is really heavily regulated and controlled. And so, because of that, there's a very, very strong need, an underlying need for constant training and education, but not just the training and education, but also ensuring that that training and education is tracked and that it's carefully understood. Now, one of the problems that comes with that is the things that motivate people are not necessarily that they are being tracked. Let me flow that back for you a minute. In other words, things that motivate people to learn are because they believe that it will help them in their performance. It will help them fulfill their purpose in their job. It will help them build their team, build their company, and so on. Things that don't necessarily motivate people is the knowledge that they are being monitored or being told what to do. Those things actually diminish the level of engagement that the average person has in the context that they have. So we start right away in the space with a kind of duality here, which is a little bit problematic, right? Because people don't like to be told what to do or when to do it, but we have an industry where heavy regulation requires that people be told what to do and when to do it, right? Especially when it comes to monitoring and understanding what's happening. So those things are kind of counter to the flow that we see identified in the Gartner article. If we look at the Gartner work, um, what we see is that 61% of financial services industry leaders are looking at an open and connected business model in partnership with external parties to create customer value, to enhance or increase the perception of value for the customer. And just note that that's a fairly holistic idea. And it's an idea that suggests that people want to have more information, more access to understanding, and that understanding isn't necessarily about understanding rules or processes or procedures. It's about understanding what's happening with whatever kind of financial transactions they happen to be involved in, right? And those might be things like insurance. And I'll drill in a little bit on some of the next slides on insurance specifically and how that industry is also seeing these kind of parallel evolutions. Now, when we look a little further into this work by Gartner, they also find that 61% of leaders said that they saw a distinct trend to prioritize end-to-end customer journey solutions enabled by external partners. In other words, not a completely closed system, but a system which is going to involve other partners and others who are capable of offering value adds that customers can actually make use of and satisfy their goals or meet their needs by leveraging those kinds of partnerships. Um, and the journey solution, I think, is an important one. That customer journey solution is something that, you may be starting to hear that more and more when we think about it in the context of customers and what customers are all about. Now, Adobe has done a great deal of work on the customer experience, understanding what the journey is that customers go through from the point that they first make contact with some aspect of your product or services to the point that they make decisions about whether or not they want to be involved with your organization, whether or not they want to make purchases from your organization, and whether or not they support your brand and your identity. All of those things and more are part of understanding what the customer journey is actually all about. And what's important here is that Gartner is identifying that, look, 61% of leaders in the industry for FSI are saying, hey, we absolutely believe this is where it's going, that the customer journey is becoming the central aspect, and that it's critically important to achieving a satisfactory level of communication with the customer. And let me just kind of pull that back a bit too and think about it in the context of what customers are actually experiencing. When they engage with content that's coming from you, they're beginning to draw parallels and think of that as you, right? They anthropomorphize our brands. They bring life to companies, and they begin to characterize what that relationship is. And that comes through the kinds of contacts that we have. And when we leverage those contacts to add value to the customer, that's what that experience life cycle is all about for the customer. If it's positive and they're finding that added value is added constantly, then they're going to grow from that and they're going to be happy with it, and they're likely to re-engage with your organization more frequently. If they're unhappy with it or they feel dissatisfied, they're less likely to continue that path. And the key here to understanding this is that it's easy to trip up in this space and create engagements that upset the customer or that bother the customer. And it's especially easy because oftentimes we view our sort of central mission as a company or an organization. I'm saying we holistically, all of us who happen to be in a business which happens to sell something, we often think, oh, well, our mission is sales. And that's kind of a mistake, right, in the modern landscape. The truth is, our mission has to be broader than that. It has to be more inclusive. We have to be more considerate of the needs of the customer. And one of those opportunities that you find integrates particularly well is the opportunity presented by learning and training. Now, think about that for a second. I started out by saying, hey, people don't like to be told what to do, when to do it in the context of learning. And now I'm offering you sort of the opposite view, saying, hey, people actually can be more engaged by learning and training opportunities if they're perceived as a value add. So, how we approach customers with opportunities to engage more deeply and to learn is everything when it comes to engagements around training and learning. And we also know from historic examples that opportunities for training and learning can be something that people are very eager or very excited about. I bet if you pause for a minute and just think to yourself, are there things that I do where I'm eager to learn about something, even though it's not being required of me? Anybody interested in, maybe you're interested in uh, plants and gardening, or maybe you're interested in cooking, or maybe you're interested in home improvement, or maybe you have a particular interest in history or museums. You may find yourself reading long novels about history or even reinvented history because you're fascinated by the way that historic events pass. You may find yourself deeply involved in learning about aeronautics or flight because you're fascinated by flight. Maybe eventually you go and get your pilot's license. These are things that you're engaging in because you have a natural curiosity to learn. And the desire to learn more about those things is important for you. If we look back at some historic examples of education for people who are engaged with organizations, either as customers or who are engaged with organizations on an intermediate level as agents or representatives within that customer, we will often find that initiatives that understood and recognized that those individual humans had curiosity naturally and were interested in various topics, and then provided value adds so that those individuals could expand their knowledge and ideas, were opportunities to uh, approach those who needed to do the learning or wanted to do the learning in a much more open and engaging way, and they were more likely to be adopted or grasped, right? In fact, we've done several studies now with a bunch of companies, and many of them have found that fairly consistently, when they don't hard assign their learning, but instead look at learning programs and initiatives as opportunities, they can actually engender a bigger response and get more people actively involved in learning more about the topics that are critically important to the organization, um, without using that kind of hard forced push. So we have this sort of both edges have to exist within this financial services industry. There has to be tracking and reporting. There is regulation. There are regulatory requirements that are coming both from governing bodies and from the industry itself. But we also have this opportunity to kind of look at things differently and say, can we expand that and make journeys that are individuated and that are much more open and much more inviting for the people who are involved. The next thing that you'll note on the chart from Gartner is that leaders identified that prioritizing hyper personalization in terms of creating customer value was absolutely something that they saw rising and something that they believe would be a ripe for investment. Now, what they're really talking about here is recognizing that people have now a kind of baseline expectation that artificial systems, that computers, that websites, that things that they engage with as part of that experience will recognize them and will accommodate their needs, simplify their process of engagement. Remember who they are, remember what kind of things they've encountered before, be sensitive to the kind of work they do, and then automatically make offerings which are appropriate to the needs that they've expressed, either through previous engagements with the organization or through direct information that's coming from how they're engaging with that journey as they go. They also identified that 32% saw that, in fact, there was a need to prioritize empathetic customer support versus transactional customer support. Now, note that that number is lower than the others, but it does suggest that people are starting to have an expectation that there will be an understanding of their emotional reaction and needs as it relates to even transactional services like purchasing insurance or working as a broker or any of these kinds of things. They will, in fact, more and more begin to expect that other considerations will be available to them. And those can be a broad range of things, including things like corporate social responsibility and how social responsibility plays a role in recognizing and defining what that organization is and who they are and what they're all about. And then finally, the study identified that prioritizing holistic decision models, for example, uh, rather than just serving up life insurance, to looking at the financial health and safety of the customer. So, looking at that broader context of who are you, as a whole human being and what might your needs be, it expands our understanding. Now, on the surface, it might seem like, well, what does this have to do with what if we think transactionally, there's the transaction we expect to do. And it might be immediately seem sort of odd that why would we even get involved in this kind of additional stuff? But in fact, people have an expectation that they think of it as a whole, right? They think of themselves as a whole, they think of their life as a whole, they think of their needs as a whole. And when we treat them that way, we're actually kind of bringing to the journey that they're having the kind of experiences that they have when they go in and talk to a friend and neighbor who happens to offer them that service personally. And so it expands their ability to do that. So, among the digital transformation, the importance of brokers and agents is remaining strong. And this coming to us from Deloitte, who are telling us about the economic value of insurance broking. This is from a 2020 survey and report from Deloitte. Now, um, it's clear that brokers are a critical part of the business, agents as well. 40% of customers are uninsured or underinsured before they engage with an insurance broker. Nearly 50% of insurance customers trust a human advisor when it comes to making a claim, compared to 12% who are willing to trust an automated phone service. So there is a distinct advantage to having that kind of human element, and it comes in the area of trust. And that trust is ultimately going to lead to continued business and ongoing opportunities for sales. So that trust, it's worth noting, is coming directly from the brokers and agents. 63% of consumers expect personalized services from their insurance service providers, and 87% of brokers and agent users had a higher amount of losses covered in a claim. So there's reasonable evidence coming from this 2020 study to suggest that there's no reasonable expectation here to sort of phase out brokers and agents, that they are adding substantial value, and that that value is understood by customers, and that those customers are more likely to continue to go with your organization because of that value. Now, a broker or an agent can have a pretty broad range of activities as they go through the day. And this is similar across a wide variety of careers, but they're obviously going to be doing some research, looking for new opportunities, new customers. They're going to be looking at a range of online and offline channels. They'll look at customer goals and how they're aligned to the products. They'll try to address customer challenges, work on maybe new packages, new offerings, new ways to present the information. And they'll analyze claims, obviously, and try to assist customers and solve their immediate needs. And then finally, they'll try to get updated on the latest regulations and certifications. But one of the things that we understand about where brokers and agents are coming from is that training is absolutely fundamental, that their requirements to maintain their active status with understanding of all the industry regulations and all of the regulatory requirements for agencies is fundamental. And because of that, sales agents and brokers have to sort of constantly ensure compliance with the industry and regulatory standards. They have to have highly specific qualifications and certifications, and they have to build that credibility over time. They have to be prepared to engage with customers across multiple channels, which means they have to have a deep technology understanding and an understanding of how modern technologies work and evolve. And that means constantly growing the communications solutions and technologies that they're capable of mastering. They also need to pursue continuous professional development programs so that they continue to improve every aspect of their work. They have to get access to all the possible information about new products and services, new offerings, and they have to be able to upgrade their clients on risks and consult them on a regular basis. They have to understand both how that communication flow works with clients, how to engage with them, and what kinds of updates and information the clients need on a regular basis. This is a lot of information. right? It's heavily informational, and it's all information that needs to be coming from brokers and agents to customers and clients. So how do we ensure as an organization that that information is actually being communicated actively in a way that's really critically important? Um, the the answer kind of comes with the definition of the problem. Think of it this way. If you're sitting there and you're a broker or an agent and you're trying to get learning, you face a really huge landscape of different ways to get information. You could be learning from product manuals. You could be learning from how-to videos or introduction videos. It could be various sources of information, everything from paper floating around the office to letters. It could be emails, could be messages coming from back channels in Slack and other kinds of messaging systems. You may be dealing without a structured peer network to support peer-to-peer learning because different offices and services can be so remote from one another that it's actually quite difficult to share information. And there may not be a substantial amount of tracking of the overall learning data as a result. Things that have been traditionally kind of housed in a very formal kind of compliance and learning management system, well, you may have tracking data about those. But what about the other aspects of learning and understanding, which are way outside of that kind of everyday compliance, but are still incredibly important to all the needs that we just talked about? Those can be really important things to hone in on. They also may face difficulty correlating between learning and performance, understanding why what they had learned is directly relevant to their overall performance. If they're in a position of trying to sell, then they may have terrific difficulty understanding why their sales numbers are moving up or down and whether or not that has anything to do with their training or their education that they've been working on, right? That's, a critical key to motivating people is understanding that there is a positive outcome in response to them taking additional learning and training. And it also helps communicate back to you whether or not that training is actually effective. So having that correlation between the performance of individuals and the amount of work that they've invested in making themselves more capable is a direct opportunity both to communicate the purpose to them so that they're more likely to be motivated to learn more and to communicate the effect or the impact to you as an organization. Now, one way to look at this is to say rather than focusing 1,000% on compliance and only worrying about those things which are regulatory requirements and letting the rest go scattered to the wind in YouTube videos and emails and waste bins, maybe there's a way to create a comprehensive academy for learning, an opportunity for learning, which becomes an opportunity in the eyes of the brokers and agents. Maybe there's a way to harness all the modern technology to bring all of these things together so that individuals can see themselves modeled inside of the system, a representative of who they are and why it's important for them to be doing the things they're doing so that they can see recommendations about what's important for them in terms of understanding what training to embrace and what kinds of work to move forward with. They can understand information about their benefits, like how was my sales performance over the last 3 months, and how does that compare to the kind of learning and training that I've taken, and are there clear correlations here? What kind of performance is happening for me? And what's happening here is what's happening across much of industries as a whole. The information that a person needs is more and more likely to be centralized. It's more and more likely to be brought into a central kind of hub experience where that person can spend their energy and focus in order to access everything right there where they need it, when they need it, how they need it. And the key to that is bringing these technologies together rather than letting them sort of stay flailed apart. That also improves the opportunity for tracking and understanding exactly what's happening, not just with the learning, but with every individual inside the organization, giving you better opportunities for your understanding of what's working, what might not be working, how to make changes, what to improve, and where those changes are creating great leverage for you and delivering great results. So, really, when we think about something like building an integrated learning academy, we're thinking about employees, we're thinking about empowering employees to deliver valuable financial outcomes for modern customers, right? We want to be able to let the brokers and the agents, those people who are between the organization and the customer, be able to deliver really great outcomes that are important financial benefits that are well rounded and that fit or conform to these kind of understandings for modern customers. And I think there's a really great opportunity for here for us to drill in on that and take advantage of those spaces. So Tony gives us a cute and clever animated slide here. Priyanka is off screen. She's the producer who's helping out, and Tony is the one who helps me out with all these wild and crazy animations. So thanks to Tony for that. And you can see what he's given us here is the challenge, the approach, and the impact as it relates to the Learning Academy for sales agents and brokers. Now, what we see here is that the challenge is that the financial service company has to be able to communicate, to distribute information and educate their sales agents, brokers on the business as a whole at scale. And it's that at scale part which is particularly challenging because that's where we're required to reach out to potentially thousands, tens of thousands, even hundreds of thousands of individuals with this kind of messaging. And it's not always easy to make that message clear at scale. And it's also often challenging to understand what was the result of that communication, right? I used to teach college. I was a college professor. And, my basic rule of teaching in college was I had to repeat everything 3 times in any lecture. And that seems a little crazy. And I tried to find ways to do it without being terribly obvious to the student that I was repeating it 3 times. But I found over the many years that if I did not repeat 3 times, most of the students would not retain a substantial portion of the information. That when we're communicating, only a small portion of what we communicate is actually being retained. Because if I say something, for example, and it makes you think about your grocery list, now you're on your grocery list. Now I've just lost you all to your grocery list. Come on back. Come on back. When you do that, right, that's a normal human response. That normal human response is what everyone has with every communication. So when you send an email to someone, they may or may not process it, understand it, and turn it into action. They may also float it off into a grocery list. And so rather than having to send that email 3 times, we have to come up with systems and methods which help us to understand what the reaction or response was when we initiated a certain kind of engagement, especially as it relates to learning. Likewise, there are often cases where a person missed a message or doesn't understand a concept, and they need to go back and understand it more deeply. And they don't necessarily know what the best source for that information is. In today's modern world, most of the time, people Google or YouTube things they don't know. Anything they don't know, they Google it or YouTube it. Now, that's unfortunately a bit of a liability for you and your organization because if they go to outside sources to understand inside processes, they may well do things incorrectly. They could do things in ways that you've decided should not be done that way in order to give your organization a competitive advantage or in order to protect your organization from legal liability. So having them run off to Google and YouTube is problematic. It could cause pretty serious problems. It could cause pretty serious costs. And it can ultimately lead to legal action in some cases if there are serious mistakes. So, not the best choice. And there are better ways to handle it. By centralizing all of these ideas and all this information and creating that kind of common hub, you give an internal kind of Google to your employees. All of those agents and brokers then understand that the place to go to learn about whatever it is, search for a specific idea, concept, or word, is to go to that internal academy where they'll find all the information, not just the information, but the information positioned and created specifically for them so that it conforms to the expectations of the organization. And that's really, it's a huge relief to kind of gather together, collect all these ideas and information into one space, and then have the ability to have understanding of who's accessing it, how they're accessing it, what they're learning from it, and to ensure that you're not getting outside information that's polluting their workflow and their idea stream with information that's not beneficial. Okay, so then we move on from there to look at the approach. Now, the approach is to integrate learning as a core component of broker-facing portal, right? So that the broker-facing portal can be this one entity, and you can have learning just integrated. Now, I think the thing you have to understand there is that learning doesn't have to be just one entity anymore. It's no longer true that you have to go to a learning management system dungeon and live inside that LMS dungeon. That's where you take your little courses, and that's that. The reality is that a modern learning architecture can completely integrate with any other kind of architecture. And that's what more and more organizations are finding and doing with these kind of academies, is that you can inject the learning directly into your front facing, internal facing, broker facing, agent facing, whatever it is, whatever that content is that you're already giving to them, whether it's the latest news and stories about things that are happening, whether it's highlights about the company goals, whether it's social responsibility or anything, all of that can go into a common space. Think of that as a common portal. And your learning can now inject into that portal as well in a way that's seamless so that people don't have to go running around picking and choosing. They can simply search within a unified portal, and then that unified space delivers up to them without jumping around, delivers the courses, the content, the ideas, the knowledge, the information that they need. And it's pretty much that simple. That also allows you to personalize the experiences based on the agent or the broker's performance. Remember, we talked a little bit about how their sales performance can actually be a metric that's determining what kinds of things are being recommended to them. Take, for example, you have a broker who's particularly good at closing deals with a certain industry or a certain vector. But that broker you think has the potential as a manager to go beyond it. Or the system recognizes that that broker has the potential for these other 5 parallel industries that they don't seem to have any awareness of. And now imagine a system that recognizes that and makes recommendations about how to break into the same kind of deals within a slightly broader audience base based on the performance that that broker has had. Okay. So all of these opportunities arise when we get to a highly personalized experience with automated recommendations, which are being fed by both an understanding of the interests and the skills of the individuals and based on an understanding of the industry as a whole, all aggregated through an artificial intelligence solution that's capable of making those kind of recommendations. Then also, you get the opportunity to audit your learning management in order to ensure that everybody is certified and keeping certification in alignment with the expectations and needs of the industry. And then finally, you have the opportunity to engage agents with rewards and recognition. You can essentially gamify this kind of solution so that when they demonstrate mastery of a skill, you're recognizing it in real time by offering them badges, by making a notation, by notifying their immediate manager or supervisor that they have accomplished this piece, but more importantly, by notifying them So you remember I mentioned at the beginning that what engages people and gets them actively interested in these kind of experiences is definitely not something like telling them they have to do this thing when. What they like is a sense of autonomy, an ability to opt in and make their own choices. They also respond positively to any recognition for their demonstration of mastery. So when they demonstrate that they have mastered a new skill, you can use an automated architecture like this to recognize that demonstration of mastery, to applaud it, celebrate it, put it on leaderboards, share it with other employees in the office, give them points for it, give them prizes for it, and even do things like let their manager know that they've had that kind of triumph. Those opportunities are presented when we put this all into this kind of common unified learning space. Finally, you have the impact. The impact is that it has been proven repeatedly to increase sales, agent and broker performance. It reduces compliance and performance challenges because it keeps everybody on track of those things, and improve the customer experience as a whole by ensuring that all of the agents and brokers are much more up to date. So obviously today, I've been talking specifically about technology related to Adobe, and specifically, we're talking about introducing this idea of a common learning academy, and that's one of those things that Adobe Learning Manager, Adobe's learning management solution, is uniquely equipped to do. It gives us an opportunity to address things like agents and broker partner learning specifically in the extended enterprise, but we can also use it for customer education. So the same architecture and system can be used, in fact, as a customer education system for an organization. Because of the way the architecture is set up, you can completely isolate those differing audiences. You can even isolate individual offices or groups or clusters, all of those things, and still have access to the understanding that comes from the data. And because it's designed to have this kind of open architecture that lets it be embedded into any common space, it gives you an opportunity to say, oh, you know what? Um, Maybe let's do this special educational unit for customers. And we can leverage the existing architecture to do that. And when we do it, we're just going to, pop up that learning opportunity that we think customers will value on a customer site. Likewise, you can do the same thing with the agents and the brokers. When they happen to be popping in to look at their latest sales performance standards and statistics, or check their certification, you can just pop up that learning right there in front of them. It doesn't have to take them anywhere. It simply allows them to see it in an interesting piece of technology that we call the fluidic player. Now, Adobe's come up with this technology, and it's been particularly interesting journey. This solution has been around now for 10 years, and one of the coolest things is from its initial onset, it solved the problem of technologies that aren't compatible over the web. So everything in Adobe Learning Manager is all visualized through a universal player. That universal player can handle things like PowerPoint and e-learning courses and video streams and audio. It can handle Word docs and just a huge variety of different kinds of pieces of content that are all common to educating people. But it converts them all to HTML5 using Adobe's backend technology. So from your perspective, you create the learning in Microsoft Word or PowerPoint or Adobe Acrobat or in a typical e-learning software tool. You just upload it into the learning management system, and the learning management system will then convert it all to HTML5, which is the language of the modern web. So there are no pop-ups, no plugins, no proprietary technology. You don't have to worry that anybody won't be able to see the content that you're actually sharing because that content has all been solved out for them and for you. It really does create a huge opportunity to make this kind of unified learning experience. It allows for either an out of the box kind of experience or what we call a headless experience. Headless experiences are much more popular today because most brands want everything to flow seamlessly within the overall experience of their organization or their brand. And because of the way that the learning management system from Adobe is architected, it can flow directly into Adobe Experience Manager sites. It can flow directly into any backend content management system. It doesn't have to be on the same domain. So it has this incredible ability to handle all the reporting, et cetera, without having to drag anybody back into an old school learning management system. It's also incredibly easy to use. So that means really quick to market. It offers all of those personalized learning journeys by automatically detecting who people are and then leveraging Adobe's artificial intelligence solution, Adobe Sensei, to automatically make recommendations to people based on their identified skills and interests and their job roles and the kinds of things that their peers are doing and so on. And of course, it includes gamification as well as social learning solutions in order to give a really comprehensive solution for everyone. Now, all these things don't necessarily make a lot of sense unless we see kind of an example, a practical example. So I'm going to jump over here and just do a little screen share and show you a more practical example of how this actually operates in the context of the financial services industry. Let me jump over. Oh, there we go. Thank you to Priyanka, my producer, who's making me look so cool, effortlessly switching me back and forth. Awesome. Okay, so I believe you're now able to see my screen, and here you can see we have an example for the insurance industry. This is an example looking at a company called Premier Protect Insurance. It's a mid-sized insurer in the United States, spread across 26 states. Premier Protect Insurance is headquartered in Atlanta with a pool of 1,200 independent agencies, and you can see the rest. They're all written out. I won't read it for you because you can clearly read it. And this is Premier Protect is hypothetical in case you're in this industry and you're thinking, I've never heard of them. This is a hypothetical example rather than an actual example. We give you the hypothetical based on the engagements we've had with customers of this type. So when we look at something like this, we like to look at who's impacted. What does this actually look like for people in the organization? So here we meet Olivia Clark, and Olivia is a business growth associate, and she works for a company called True Blue Agents. Olivia uh, is working as partner for Premier Protect, and she has about 7 years of experience uh, in selling the banking products, and has been assigned to Premier Protect account to sell their B2B insurance packages over the last 2 quarters. To access her performance details, Olivia needs to log into her partner portal at True Blue Agents. Now, Olivia reports in this context to Mary Jane Stewart. And I saw somebody ask a question. I didn't see what it was. It just sort of flashed up briefly for me. So if um, somebody might read that to me or let me know what that question was. Or if there may be someone in the room who can also answer it for you in chat. So we'll kind of go there that way. I'll keep plugging in and we'll see what that said. So we get to the portal itself, right? Now the portal is a web portal, right? A web-based portal, and it's of your design, right? So in this case, the design calls it Premier Protect Academy, and here's where she's going to go in order to actually have this experience. And you can see that there's some information about the portal. There's an opportunity to register in case she doesn't have an account. Here's some latest news and information about the various projects that have been recognized for Premier Protect. Now, like any common website like this, Olivia is going to start with a login. She'll click on that login and then she'll enter her personal information and actually log into the site. Now, once she's done that, it'll take her into, again, a custom portal. This portal has been designed in order to serve the needs of this particular organization. So it has integrated information that's designed to help her understand where she sits in the organization, understand what kinds of opportunities are available to her, help her find things that Olivia may be able to leverage in order to improve her overall performance. Now, you'll notice right away that the organization has decided that Olivia's performance, her sales performance, is of particular interest, and that they want to ensure that she's able to access that information right away. So she can see the deals that are on the table for her, and she can see the reporting of those deals and the tracking of those across the quarters. And that information then helps her to understand what her performance is doing. She also can see badges that she's earned, and these badges can be earned for various kinds of engagement with learning content. She can also see things like recommended certifications. Consultative selling certification is available to her, and if this is something that the organization wants to promote, they can target that specifically. So they can look at Olivia and her role and determine that she's generally doing B2B sales on an executive level. So consultative selling is probably the approach that her team has decided to align to and wants to recommend that Olivia get a certification in this area specifically. Now, meanwhile, you'll notice that there are also notifications about pending compliance training, and they're color coded to let her know that she's actually slipped behind on this third party risk management, that she's getting in the danger zone on anti money laundering, and that she's in the green on the next course they're available. Now, she can see all of those courses and all of that content, and she also can see the leaderboard. So she can see based on a comparison with the other people who are in her direct unit. This team has been identified by the administrator to say, these are the people I want Olivia to be compared to in the gamification solution. And she's now seeing that she's at 93 points compared to 102 points in the lead and 87 points in the lag. And so she's in a good position, but maybe she wants to get a little further out. Now, one of the things she can do is simply click on view courses taken by peers, and it will automatically show her through the AI recommendations courses that her peers have taken and give her the opportunity to go through and explore those courses and consider whether she wants to enroll in them or not. Now, she also has the ability to just explore courses. She can enroll in one, see the detailed information about that course. And all of this information is, of course, being driven by the learning management system, but it's customized to the brand aesthetics, the design and visualization desires of the organization. So the host organization is really making all the brand choices here, but all the content is being brought through. Now, once in the event that Olivia decides she wants to take the course, she can continue the course, and that will launch what we call the fluidic player. That's that player I was telling you about, where it will play videos, it will play audio files, it will play e-learning courses, it plays PowerPoints and PDF files, all in HTML5 format. So there's no plugins here, there's no proprietary technology, there's no pop-ups. This is all staying right where it was and giving Olivia a chance to learn that stuff. Now, once she finishes that course, she can even get a badge pop up to let her know that she's completed it. We know that the moment that a person receives a reward or recognition, that their demonstration of mastery is recognized and fed back to them, that causes a little bit of a dopamine hit. And during that moment of the dopamine hit, you will have a substantial increase in their likelihood to take further action. So you could, for example, simply congratulate Olivia here. You could also recognize her here and challenge her to do something else. And that challenge could be anything. It could be a challenge to enter a competition to enhance her overall sales for the quarter. It could be a challenge to take more education. It could be a challenge to participate in a corporate social responsibility opportunity or to play a game. It can literally be anything. And those things all work together to motivate people inside the organization to just keep growing and moving further and improving their overall ability. So you can see what this does is it brings into a central kind of um, space, a place where individual brokers and agents can actually access all the information that's critically important to them. They can look at comparative understanding of how that information is actually benefiting them. They can search for new information and ideas and opportunities related to education. and they can have opportunities to see how their peers are doing, even compete with their peers, and better understand how the work that they're doing is playing an important role for the customers. Everything from news insights, the latest information and ideas from the organization, things like the learning and content, all existing together in one common ground to help people really move forward through their job more productively and to help the organization more effectively track and understand. Because everything that we've looked at here is also being tracked on the back end. And those reports then are available on the back end so that people can actually see it. Now, speaking of those reports, if we look at things like Mary Jane Stewart, right? So Mary Jane runs a full house team with 13 agents spread across 6 states in the US. Mary Jane has a different dashboard. Look at Mary Jane's dashboard. Mary Jane is actually looking at other kinds of information. Where are my offices located? How many of my people are in those offices? What are the growth associates' current head count? What's the new insurance premium in 2023? So she's getting a sense of what her total volume is, what her attainment is, what her compliance training pending is, and what's specifically happening with each of those individual 13 brokers. Now, if you just keep imagining this expanding, you realize quickly that these dashboards become critical pieces of information that help a manager or a director understand exactly what their operation is doing. And they can then take action based on those kinds of pieces. So that's the basic story of Premier Product and Protect Insurance, and hopefully that gives you a sense of the kinds of things that are possible with this kind of online academy. We have some other folks in the room who are extraordinarily good at these things as well, who I'm sure will be happy to share their experiences. And we also we're taking questions, Priyanka? Are we taking questions? Priyanka? Hello?
Yes, I'm here. There's just one question from Rebecca,
Sure.
who asked if this is mostly an HR tool or compliance tracker, and if it's a replacement for Workday.
Excellent question. Uh, this is fundamentally an a learning management architecture, which includes everything relative to compliance, but it also includes. We didn't get into much of that, but you might have noticed there was a calendar. So, for example, it includes scheduling for live face-to-face training. It includes scheduling for virtual training, integration with most virtual training platforms. It includes all of the kinds of things that you need for everything from skill demonstrations to conventional e-learning courses and content. And then it integrates with Adobe's customer experience platform, which is AEM Sites. Now, AEM Sites is a solution which allows you to deliver content, digital content, uh, websites, and web spaces to various audiences, right? And so by integrating with AEM Sites, it's able to actually give you the ability to have the content appear in areas that people would normally think of more traditionally as websites, but it's able to integrate all of that content. So, in terms of a replacement for, I think um, there are aspects of each of those things which are relevant. This is more comprehensive. So if you have to compare it in your mind to learning management systems, I think you could comparatively look at it similar to Cornerstone or Docebo. But unlike those solutions, it has this really substantial ability to be extended into the enterprise architecture so that you can do things like offer courses for sale and use Adobe Commerce to automatically assess fees for those courses, or you can simply understand costs with that rather than specifically charging people. and get all of the benefits of commerce, which has all the benefits of international monetary solutions and all that kind of stuff. It also has the ability to integrate with Adobe Marketo, and Marketo allows you to do things like handle campaigns, marketing campaigns. So if you're familiar with marketing campaigns through Marketo, you realize that that allows for artificial intelligence to be used to generate understanding of who should be marketed through emails and other kinds of campaigns based on triggers which come after a certain number of web interactions. So you you can kind of think of it as a really interesting uh, combination of Adobe's customer experience tools and Adobe's learning management solution, which is quite powerful in and of itself. It's possible to do Adobe Learning Manager on its own, but for the most part, we find that in these industries, there's a much stronger interest in leveraging this sort of headless experience, deep branding, integration with existing customer workflows and customer experience and so on. It's a great question, by the way.
I think she had a follow-up as well,
Sure.
for does this include task assignment and workflow for client billable hours?
Excellent question. So not in the traditional legal sense, but it is extensible. So it's entirely possible to work with an SI partner to do that kind of thing. But it doesn't include that kind of task assignment workflow that you would traditionally associate with legal, or that you might associate with certain services oriented solutions out there. Yeah, good question.
Okay, Alan, I think we are almost at the end of our time for today. So I'm going to drop in the email ID that we can take some more questions for. So if there are any more questions from the audience, you can please write to us at learningmanagersales@adobe.com. I'm also putting it in the chat for anybody who wants to pick it up from there.
Thanks, Priyanka, and thanks to all of you for joining today. We hope you'll join us again in a future session. Thanks, everybody.